Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traven, and in today's video, we're once again having to clean off this cart. It's not even been a month. Cart's getting out of control. Gotta take care of it. Gotta look at what I've read in the past, like not even a month. We're a couple of days short of a month from when I did this last. So, as always, we're going to start with things I've already reviewed / like other videos you can go look at. So, of course, a huge stack of manga from the manga tournament. So this is Blood on the Tracks, That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, Witch Hat Atelier, Beastars, and Chainsaw Man. All of those videos should already be posted. You can go look at the manga tournament. I highly recommend that you do, because very soon the final video will be out, if it isn't already. We have What the River Knows. This was both a YA book club book for Barnes & Noble and a Fairy Loot box book. So I did a review where I talked about it for sure, because it's falling under both the series that I tend to follow and try to get videos out for. Again, go check out the review. This one might not have a review up yet, but it most certainly will at some point soon, and that is The Crimson Moth. This is another one that came from the Fairy Loot box, and so I will definitely do a review of that soon. I think that covers us for things you can look elsewhere to get my thoughts on them. We'll talk about comics first, get those all off the cart, and then we'll talk about books. Not a whole lot of books this month. I've been focusing very heavily on graphic novels and manga. So we'll start with this one here. This is Everything is Fine. So Everything is Fine is a Webtoons comic, I believe. It's been collected in 2 volumes so far. There's a lot more out on the actual website, but it is a pay service. So I'm just going to wait for these essentially trade paperbacks to come out. This tells the story of a couple of cat-headed people who live in a world that is seemingly idyllic, and then very quickly shows that is not true. It's very weird, and still a lot of questions even after 2 volumes of what's going on. I will say that reading volume 1 and 2 does kind of resolve one major conflict and lead to the next major part of the story. So they were definitely 2 that read well together. It is one that I'd highly recommend, although I don't think I'll do a review for it, maybe in the future when I've read several issues. I read Akane Banashi, volumes 1 and 2. This is another one that I think I'd want to review like longer form as a series. So this is about the Japanese art of rakugo, which is like storytelling. And it's one of these things that doesn't feel like it should work, because that's very much a live art, right? But they find clever ways to interpret that and to visualize it, and the core of the story is still very much your like shonen sports manga feel to it, with these tournaments, and you're definitely rooting for the main character. They're gaining skills in the same way that you would see in like a volleyball manga or a basketball manga. So for the culture alone, I would recommend this. If you are a fan of Japanese culture, you want to learn about what is probably a more obscure art even within Japan, this is a very cool title and a very fun one. So I would check that out if that is something that interests you. This is Wind. So this is a James Tynion book that I just am picking up a bunch of James Tynion the Force stuff, because I love most of what he's put out. I really love Something is Killing the Children, probably one of my favorite comics coming out right now. And so I've just been going back into his backlog and picking out books. This one's about a fantasy world where magic is outlawed. It's a world that seems to like twist and turn your body if you're just a normal person. You get out into the wilds and crazy things start happening to you, and it follows the titular Wind as he is trying to navigate what he's going to do because he's been living in this city in secret, and some very unfortunate things happen to him, and he's got to escape into the wilds. And so a solid story, a fun story, definitely an interesting setting, and is telling a compelling narrative as well. So I look forward to picking up more of these. I think 5 volumes are out at the moment, so I'll be looking for more of those in the future. Another one that I have a review for coming up, if it's not already been released, is the Transformers volume number 1. So go check out that review. Spoilers, it's really good for me, but your mileage may vary. So I definitely go look at the review if it's something that you've got your eyes on. Just read Cosmonites like last night. This is a queer sci-fi fantasy, or I'd say it's bordering more on space fantasy than it is like true sci-fi. It's a lighter, breezier title. If you liked something like Paper Girls, I think would be a good comparison with this particular story, where it's got those sci-fi elements, but they don't really worry too much about explaining the science behind them. It's just to tell a compelling story. You think about it too hard, this world doesn't really work. In it, there are a number of planets. They've all got princesses, and those princesses are offered up as tribute for jousts, basically not quite gladiatorial combat, but it is really reminiscent of like jousts and festival, like medieval festival fair, just set in a space setting. The characters are very interesting. The story is very compelling, and Volume 1 really does tell a very good origin story and lead off at a point that is very intriguing, wanting to know what's happening in Volume 2, which I know is also out. So this is another one that I'm interested in picking up the sequel book, another really strong one. Another one that I already have a review for, Serial. Go check out my Serial review. Most ambitious crossover of all time, and an awful lot of fun with Serial mascots. Love Everlasting is one that I heard a lot of hype for, and I enjoyed it okay. I don't feel like I'm getting what other people are getting out of it. It's about a girl who is repeatedly reincarnating essentially into the bodies of these girls with doomed loves, it seems. So as soon as she confesses her love for her significant other, or as soon as she tries to fight against the marriage, the union of her and her significant other in this new life, someone comes by, and the cowboy comes by and kills her. And it feels very Westworld in a way. And I feel like the enjoyment of this is going to really hinge on moving forward. How much of the curtain are they willing to pull back and discuss the larger story at work? Because just reading her jump from life to life and have these different like romance scenarios play out is not going to be compelling. It started getting interesting toward the end when she started pushing against it, and when we had one iteration where it seems like she's talking to people who are in the inner workings, the architecture behind her continuing to revive. A very interesting premise, a very fun attempt at reviving maybe a stale genre in these like these nickel romances. However, it was something that I feel like needs to explore the lore of the story a little bit more to continue to hold my interest. I will pick up a Volume 2. I just don't know if if Volume 2 is not doing more, then it'll probably stop there. Berserk Deluxe Editions Volume 3 and Volume 4 I've read. Berserk is one of the strongest manga that I've read in a very long time. Graphic, violent, often very adult in its content and its messaging. What is keeping it afloat is the fact that we are not hand waving that violence, even like the sexual violence, as it pertains to the main character. So we are following a victim of sexual violence as he grows into an adult and tries to reconcile what his life's meaning is and what his purpose is. It's got some deeper themes going on than just the bombast of these splashy panels of wartime or of these violent depictions that you often see when Berserk is being discussed. I do feel like it is rather slow moving and rather methodical. Not only wants to impart the lessons and the messages that it is going for, but do that continuously. And it does drag at points, but there's no denying the influence of Berserk on the modern day shonen scene. It is a seinen series. It's an adult series, but it's definitely influencing like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man and these more modern day shonen titles as well. So a very influential comic, one that I'm definitely going to continue. The deluxe editions are a bit pricey, but you get 3 volumes for that price and they're oversized. So it's definitely worth the cost. It's just a matter of, can my wallet withstand it? Can my wallet keep up with it? And so it's one that I'm trickling a little bit slower. Nothing Special is one that I mentioned in a short recently that I picked up because I got a bookmark of all things. It just looked cute and fun. It's a very whimsical story. This is one that is like enchanted woods, couple palling around. Main character's father has gone missing, and so she's looking for him. So it deals with family. It deals with found family. And it does so in a way that is not flippant, but is very light, and so it never feels super serious or grim or dark, even though it's exploring some pretty heavy themes, especially toward the end, when they find the father and they learn about things that have been going on with her and her family. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit whimsical, or maybe something that's aimed at a little bit younger of an audience, if you have a child and you want to introduce them to longer graphic novels, then this might be a good choice for you. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 out of 5, so it was good. Bad Dream, A Dreamer's Tale is another one of these comics that DC's putting out that are kind of one and done comics. It tells a story of a certain character, in this case your Dreamer, and this is also very clearly a trans story. So the main character is a trans alien, and so feels like an outcast even among a group that's already outcast. And so it deals a lot with that. A good chunk of the story is dedicated to her meeting up with a group from another comic series, another one shot that they've put out, Galaxy, the Prettiest Star, that I need to pick up. It's a lot of her palling around with them and learning to accept herself and learning that there are places out there that are going to be a comfort for her and be a place where she can be herself. And then we've also got the plot of this intergalactic conspiracy, like what is her mother's real upbringing, what's her planet really like, and ends with some strong theming about living your truth and some people in her life come around and accept who she is, and some don't. And I felt like that was also important to show that not everything is going to end up perfect for someone going through a difficult time like that. So one that I really did enjoy. I think 4 out of 5. The story in parts is just a little bit too generic, a little bit too by the numbers, especially the like the main thread of like what was going on with her mom and things like that. A little bit too predictable. But again, I think this is not aimed at me. I think this is aimed at a younger audience, teens and young adults. And I think for them, this is a very important thing to have that representation and to see themselves in these characters. And so I really appreciated that of the story. It's also kind of a downer because with these DC one and dones, like, where do I go if I want to read more about this character? There's nothing else really. There's not going to be a follow-up. These are standalone stories. And so as much as I enjoyed the characters and as much as I enjoyed their interactions with one another, if this character ever comes up again, it's probably going to be as a background character in another one of these one and done stories. And so that's kind of a downer. That's kind of not what I want out of the comic books, the mainstream comic book. Overall, strong. I would recommend it. Demon Wars. Oh, oversized, huge comic. This is Peach Momoko, another one of authors that I will almost certainly go and pick up their work. There's another one called Demon Days, which I think came before this one. This is a reimagining of the Avengers as mostly yokai, Japanese monsters, and it's very fun on one level to see like the Nekomata and be like, oh, that's Black Panther, and try to figure out like, who is this character supposed to be, like, because they don't refer to each other as like Cyclops or Jean Grey or whatever. They refer to them as what their Japanese equivalents would be. Art's beautiful, looks like watercolor. Peach Momoko's style is always one that is welcome and I really enjoy. And the fusion of the Avengers with this Japanese aesthetic works really nice. Tells a pretty straightforward story, but one that had a lot of like intrigue. There's a lot of mystery going on of like, who is pulling the strings, who is doing these things, and why is this character acting off. Kind of sets up this like Civil War-esque storyline, but in a much different setting, and I really appreciated the flavor of this comic. Having it oversized like this is also really nice because, like I said, one of the biggest appeals for me is this art, and having the very large pages definitely helps with highlighting that. 8 billion genies. The premise of this is that everybody on Earth gets a genie, and they get one wish, and it goes in some predictable beats, but ones that were almost always entertaining. The superhero element of it, I feel like, was a little bit indulgent, and like, I don't know if that's really what would happen. And the end really didn't work for me. They talk about the perfect wish, and the problem is when you introduce the concept of the perfect wish, whatever that wish is not going to live up to the mystique that you created around it. And so someone, spoilers for like the end of the book, but someone figures out the perfect wish or wishes the perfect wish, and it changes the status quo. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit offbeat and something that looks at the concept of what would happen if everybody had a wish in a way that, again, I'm not going to say it's realistic, but there are certain elements of it that definitely seem like this is the trajectory we would go on as we progress through the 8 billion wishes that we could potentially have. A fun comic in most parts. One that definitely held my attention. I think this one ended up being 4 out of 5. Again, the ending really irked me. And parts of it felt a little bit like, again, self-indulgent, like, just, oh, I want to tell a superhero story, so we're going to make it to where this is a thing. Still, I'd recommend it. Very good story. I read this, which is just a Godzilla art book for Battle Spirits, which is a card game. So basically, it's not a book at all because it's all just the art of these cards. But I love Godzilla, and so I read that book, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it. But did not count it on Goodreads, did not count it as a book written, or did not count it as a book read because it really wasn't. All right, got a couple of books, but my battery is going to die, so we're going to take a break, and I'll come back and do the books in a moment. And by a moment, I, of course, meant a week and a half, I think, at this point. The good news is that we only have a few titles left to go through on my cart. So we have Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight. This one I read physically from my library. It was off of a short that I looked at that was like, oh, it's so crazy. Like, every chapter has this bombshell twist at the end. And that's true for maybe the first 3/4 of the book. At some point, you start getting the sense of like where the story is heading, and that no longer works. If this is translated from Japanese, I found it either something lost in translation or possibly just the style of writing in Japan that's popular right now. Seems very overwrought, seems very detailed, but it's not saying a whole lot, and it really did rely on those twist endings to the chapters to keep me pushing through this. I'm going to read something out of Japan, though. Confessions or Penance are both better options than this title. I read The Last Murder at the End of the World. I actually listened to this on audiobook, but I loved it so much that I went out and bought the physical copy. A very interesting sci-fi future story about the end of the world. There's this fog that covers most of the earth. There's this one island of humanity that's left. And as you go through the story, you learn more and more about not only the incident, like what occurred, but also the people on the island. And it's all told from this third-person perspective, but the third-person perspective is a character because there is this technology that exists in everybody's mind that can hear their thoughts and like knows where they are. And so very interesting perspective, very fun mystery. There's basically a murder that everybody witnessed, but then their minds were wiped. And so everybody should know what happened, but nobody does. And so they're trying to cobble together what happens the night of this murder. Very cool story. This is from the same author that did the 7.5 Deaths of, what was it? Evelyn Hardcastle? I can't remember the name. It's one of those name books. But another one that I really enjoyed. Same kind of sci-fi twist to a murder mystery type story. So a fun one here. Also listened on audiobook to A Magic Steeped in Poison. Even though I own the title, it was just easier this month for whatever reason to listen to audiobooks. This one I really liked. I gave it 5 out of 5. The world building in particular really stood out to me. So this is a world where tea is and tea ceremonies are the way that magic is brought about in the world, and the first book is all this tournament style thing to become the next person put into the like royal household. So it's like the best part of the Scarlet Alchemist without the weird ending, but it has a sequel book, and so maybe it'll get to that same point. It does feel like the ending kind of negates a lot of the rest of the story because some other bigger problem looms on the horizon. But again, the world building was so strong. I was really captivated by the story here, and so a 5 out of 5 for me, a definite recommendation for Magic Steeped in Poison. I listened to Nura and the Immortal Palace on audiobook. This was a middle grade story, very straightforward, not a whole lot to hold my interest. It felt very generic, but again, I'm not the target audience. I think if you want just a short fantasy read, and you don't have anything else that you're wanting to get to, it was fine. It was a good like day and a half of audiobook listening while I waited for other titles to become available. But I think I gave it 3 out of 5. It was fine. It just wasn't anything that was remarkable or anything I was going to take away from. It does have an important message and an important afterword from the author about the importance of that message, and does fit in stories of jinn and the genie, that Middle Eastern mythology. If that is something that you are interested in, you should check it out. But again, for me, it wasn't anything groundbreaking, and it's not something that stood out to me from this month. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. I hope you are finding books that you love and appreciate, whether it's audiobook, comic, manga, or novel, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is that you are enjoying. I hope you are finding things that are a good fit for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.